Welcome to the first episode of Questions and Aznables. I'm your host for today, Char Aznabrawler, and today we are joined by Negative Legend.
Hello.
You probably know him by now. He is a really famous, not only BakuTuber, Baku Master, but also really famous YouTuber who just recently hit, is it 100,000?
100,000? I'm a little bit above that now.
Who has hit 100,000 and some change subscribers. Glad to have you on the show, Negative Legend.
It's great to be here.
All right, so I guess we'll start off with a question you probably get a lot. What inspired you to do YouTube videos and just like videos on old games?
So, it all started off with, I had just, let's see, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pendulum Monsters came out, and I was really trying hard to get into the competitive scene of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it was during a time when I didn't have any disposable income, and I was basically just foregoing lunch at school every single day in order to try and save up money to get the really competitive cards. And I realized how absolutely horrendously difficult it is to get into the competitive scene of Yu-Gi-Oh! Without a good amount of money. And just seeing the way the mechanics have been changing for Yu-Gi-Oh was really upsetting me, and how you could really start to feel the downward turn that Yu-Gi-Oh was going on. And so this new card game, Force of Will, was coming out during that time. Some of my friends were getting into it. I started seeing a community build up just out of nowhere. And so I decided I wanted to start a YouTube channel to make sure that Force of Will didn't go down the same avenue that Yu-Gi-Oh did. And so I wanted to be a voice for the community, and that's what really pushed me towards it. Then eventually I realized I could just spread into more card games, and I loved Chaotic, the card game, and I wanted to know why it stopped, and that's when I made the first What Happened To video, the first What Happened to Chaotic, and a year went by after that one, and it did decently well for someone with 1,000, maybe 3,000 subscribers. It got to 30,000 views during that time. And then a year later, someone randomly on the YouTube comments just said, "Hey, you should do one on Bakugan." And I'm like, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Then I did, and that hit 1,000,000, and that's when my channel went from 3,000 to 30,000. And then it just started the trend of me just doing What Happened To videos, and I had to shift my focus from trading card games to cartoons and more of that avenue of content. But I still really want to. I've been wanting to get back into trading card games for a long while, and I try to make sure I at least stick with Bakugan, because I still that's a big core of my channel and a big part of my audience. So I had to drop a lot of card games in order to focus more of my resources towards higher quality videos, and it kind of hurts me in my heart, but I feel like it was probably the right move.
I feel that having to drop, games we love for other important things hurts.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped Yu-Gi-Oh some time ago for Vanguard.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people do that. That's not
Yeah.
uncommon.
I mean, around my scene, it's kind of some Yu-Gi-Oh player broke into a store. But that's enough about me, all right? This is an interview on you, so I guess on the subject of videos, did you think you'd be a Baku master or a popular YouTuber when you were younger?
I with my relation with Bakugan isn't as connected as some of the other Bakugan YouTubers.
So you weren't
Uh,
like
I was never as 100% committed to Bakugan as I wanted to be, because Bakugan came out during a time in my life when I was. It was not a happy time in my life. I'll just say that. And I was only able to watch the first series, and after that, I was just. My attention was taken away for other more personal issues that I had to deal with that I won't dive into, but I never really had the chance to get into Bakugan as heavily as I could, but it was always just there in the background with everything I was growing up with, and I would always every time I went to the toy store, I'd always look at the toys and look at the new Bakugan and try to figure out what was new and what was happening. And some of my friends would always get the new Dragonoid Maximus, and I really just lived I experienced Bakugan vicariously through them, and so really a lot of what I do with my channel is all the stuff I wanted to really grow up with that I never really had the chance to grow up with. And that's the issue that I had with Bakugan and Chaotic and a little bit of Winx Club. I actually was interested in Winx Club, but I could never do it because I thought it was a girls' thing, and I couldn't do that because I was afraid of getting bullied at school, which I really shouldn't have been. And that's really my connection with it, in terms of my channel and my now connection, my now quote unquote popularity with the Bakugan scene.
It's like that for a lot of people, you know. Some people like things a bit too late, and by the time they get into it, it's dead, basically. Like, I got into Mega Man Battle Network and Mega Man Star Force way, way past, the time when the things were being released.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got into you cut off there for a second. You said Mega Man what?
Mega Man Battle Network and Star Force.
There it is. Yeah, I got into Battle Network when the Team Colonel came out. What was that, the fourth one?
I think
And
it was the fifth one.
fifth one. So that's
Yeah.
that's one away from the final one.
Yeah.
That's even worse. Yeah, I managed to jump into Mega Man Star Force just at the start of it, so I got lucky there. But I had no idea what was going on in the story of Battle Network. But it was just such a solid game. I loved it. I'm desperately hoping that they release Battle Network Collection on Switch, or just re-release it so that I can not have to pay. What, do they have it digitally? I actually have not checked that. I'm going to look into that after this.
I'm not sure either, but I do know that if they do it on like Switch, I don't think they'll have some of the extras they used to have, because there was a compatibility with a bunch of Game Boy games and other things like Boktai, that one Sun game, and other stuff like that. They had compatibility like that.
Yeah, and I know that people feel like that's a big aspect to it, and it is, but it's only a big aspect at the time when it's released, and it's more of a social thing, and the social aspect of gaming has shifted heavily, and it's not as even if they somehow manage to port it to the game now, I don't think it would have the same effect as it did when it was fresh and new with the Game Boy Advance and DS. So I honestly don't think it's as big of an issue as people would like to think it is.
That's understandable. All right. Now for our next question, or this is more like two questions in one. Um, what do you is there anything you'd want to see Bakugan do, as in anything like in the toys or like events, cards you'd want to see like ability wise, and like what would make a good series for you? Like what makes a series that you want to get into?
Okay, so when I think of this question, I think of it more of a business standpoint and how we as consumers try to get the product. One thing I want is if they can't get, I know they're focusing on trying to get the cards into local game stores, and that's obviously a big thing that everyone wants. But if that's number one priority, of course, I'm just going to assume that's the number one priority. But assuming that's not really quite on the table, because I know they're having some distribution problems, and they are trying to tackle it as much as they can. I would say that at the very least, add more packs to the booster boxes, because 24 is just not enough. And if you're someone like me who sees the cards, and it's very rare to see cards in the state I live in, you just take all of them, and that's the mindset that people have. So, and I know that's only hurting the 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 other consumers, the other people who want to get the cards, because I'm hoarding them all. And I know if I don't hoard them all, someone else is just going to. And the only way to fix that is just to have more cards being shipped out. And if you can't do it with the amount of the amount of units that Walmart or Target orders, you can at least increase the number of packs in a single box. That's one thing. I know that I've been hearing some people are upset about the way diamonds are distributed. And that's the when I made the top 9 things we need for. That's the entire reason I wanted them to have blind boxes because I knew that'd be an issue. But from Spin Master's perspective, it's absolutely not an issue because it only makes people want to go out and search for a Bakugan themselves, and it gets people out the door. And it's just an issue of you getting lucky. And for them, it's just easier sales. So I can't really expect them to change anything about that. In terms of the game, I don't have a problem with the game. The mechanics I feel are fine. I think they should do more with the sacrifice mechanic because I still think it's bad. I want to make a mono Darkus deck, and everyone who does make it just kind of agrees that it sucks. So if they can at least kind of focus on making more viable mono decks, mono teams, I'd appreciate that a little more. Or at the very least, just make sacrifice a decent mechanic because I don't feel like there's enough support with that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying on the mono thing. I've seen a lot of anti-mono cards, like cards that are like, oh, if your opponent's whole deck is full of this type of card or like this attribute, then they get this debuff. And I've seen there's that, but there's barely any actual mono support. In fact, there's more things that support diversity with the Age of Aurelus cards, which um nobody has except for a certain few people. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's been cards that are like, oh, if you have these certain attributes in your deck, you get this extra effect. So yeah, I
And really,
understand.
if your opponent is running a mono deck, you're kind of already winning. So what's the point of having a debuff? And who's going to run a debuff with against assuming that they're going to run into an opponent with a mono team? That's not really going to happen.
Yeah, the cards are some cards are way too situational.
And I get that. I mean, I have learned that when you design a game, you have to include bad cards, and it sounds wrong, but from a design standpoint, it's like you need to make the good cards look even better by having bad cards, and you need to encourage creativity by giving them bad cards, and some people will make them good. I've had a few friends who will have specifically in a Magic the Gathering scene. There was a card that came out. I don't know which one, but he told me that everyone in his play group thought it was like one of the worst cards ever, and he said, "Okay, challenge accepted." And he built an entire deck around it just to make it good, and he succeeded. And that eventually went on to spiking the price as people slowly caught on that it's actually good. So having bad cards, I'm not upset about, but having cards with mechanics that just don't make sense within this giant and the entire scope of the game bugs me.
Yeah, I feel that. I understand. So, next question is, what is your opinion on the community? What do you think of the community as a whole? Do you think there are some people who should be called out for their negative behavior on the card game, or scalpers? What's your opinion on not only them but the community as a whole, and as well as what's it like to be a big content creator in the community?
So, in terms of how I feel about the community, my exposure to the community is mostly just with the YouTuber, the creator aspect of it. So I can't just say YouTuber. It has to be creator because I do talk to people who are more than just making YouTube videos, and
Mhm.
those people are typically very positive. So personally, my exposure has been extremely positive. But there are some communities that I am not going to name online that are already toxic, and it's very upsetting. But um, at least with the content creator community, we know who those people are, and we ward people away from them, and we warn them about it. So we're trying to mitigate that. Um, but if it, my biggest issue with my opinion on the quote unquote community is that I don't have a solid grasp of the middleman of the community, the actual physical presence of the community where I live. Bakugan hasn't really set in, hasn't really taken hold, even though I've tried on multiple occasions to start a group at my local game store. It's usually failed because we're all poor college students who can't afford anything. and I'm the only one with any disposable income, and really everyone has to borrow my decks, and I can only really have 3 decks with what I have. So really, my understanding of a community is actually going to the people and where the people congregate, because you can't get a good sense of what the community is by the upper echelons, I guess, which sounds conceited, but I'm just going to go with that one for lack of a better term. The upper echelon of the community with the content creators, and the bottom of the barrel with the toxic community online. That's not really a good representation of the community. Really, I don't think there is enough of a presence to get a good judgment of what the community is. But since there isn't really that much of a community at right now, I would have to say that the community is positive.
I understand. Yeah, there are a lot of, I guess, trolls and actual good people in the community, as well as content creators. Sometimes you get to be one of the content creators and know the nicer people. Other times you're not fortunate enough to actually talk to these people and um get stuck with the toxic people. It's I feel like there actually might be a divide in the community between the people who are like popular content creators and then everyone else. Most
Yes, I feel the same thing.
because you guys as content creators get like really special things
Mm-hmm.
and cards that some of us, like the normal person, might not even have unless they're like really lucky. Not only like not only because you guys are lucky, but because I guess Spin Master is not necessarily playing favorites, but like really trying to like get out there with their like representation stuff, like trying to get a lot of people to represent it.
And I understand the upset with the content creators getting these special things and these exclusive whatevers. And when I was still in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I was seeing all these other YouTubers getting all these special packages from Konami, or some of the Pokemon YouTubers getting special packages from Nintendo, from the Pokemon Company, or whoever distributes it, I forget. I was also extremely jealous, but but what you need to just understand, and I think most of the people who are voicing these complaints aren't really getting through their heads, is that it's just a marketing tactic, and that's really all it is. It is unfair, and even we as the creators know that it's unfair, and but there's not really anything that we can do about it. And really, our only option is to either take it or not take it. And if we don't take it, then we're just not taking full advantage of an opportunity. So logically, from where we're standing, it doesn't make any sense for us not to take these advantages.
Yeah. It's basically missing out on like a lot of things. All right. Next question is, what do you think of when you deck build? What goes in a good deck? What like to you?
So that is that. I mean, now that the meta's changed, it's all that's never a simple answer. I mean, with Yu-Gi-Oh, I would say that it was a simple answer, but it only always depends on the meta, especially with Bakugan. How there's been basically 2 metas so far. How previously it was super fuel and getting things out for free, and now it's I don't even know the meta anymore because we're shifting over to Armored Alliance, and I haven't gotten enough of a enough testing sessions to see how the cards play out. I know that there is a lot of focus with the core placements and how focusing on your skill is a heavy aspect to it. All I know is that universally, the most important aspect to this game is just rolling. The skill with how you roll and actually land on cores, and the actual physical aspect to it. You can have the best deck in the world, and I spent so long building my decks, and I've missed too many rolls and wasn't able to put up a fight, and I lost against a very terrible deck that I know is terrible because I built it and I was letting my friend borrow it, and he won. And I want to say that I can give tips about what goes into a good deck, but really the core aspect to it is how much practice you put into rolling your Bakugan. And assuming that both players have equal skill regularly, reliably, then it would be. Then at that point, it would be diversification in your team, because having a mono team isn't good. It would be understanding what your goal is for your build of the deck, because sometimes it's beatdown, sometimes it's rushing your opponent, getting free things out, as with the last meta, at least the one I experienced. And you need to understand how many flip cards you should have in your deck, because my most competitive deck that I had 3 flip cards. And a lot of people want to say that you should have 10 or maybe 16, and the numbers kind of vary depending on who you talk to. And people want stop cards, and it really wholly depends on how you construct your deck and what you want to be doing with your cards.
Yeah. I know some people who, when they deck build, they don't even like take flip cards into account. I'm personally not really good with deck building, which is why I've been asking people like Fang Shaman, like who's my friend, and like other people, like some people from the Baku nerds. I've been asking these people to like help me deck build. And like this one deck that I have right now, which I'm gonna edit because I really don't feel like Darkus is actually working, because like you said, it's like not that good anymore. Like it needs to
isn't.
be
It really,
buffed.
it's sad. It
Which
hurts me.
the only actual Darkest cards I play are Lightning, which is the one that gives +2 attack, and
Mm-hmm.
Maximus Garganoid Ultra, which I know that you
Yes.
play too, Garganoid Bros, because
That's so good.
I have a diamond Garganoid, so
Ooh,
it's actually my
nice.
only diamond. But yeah, like I've been feeling like this hasn't been working out yet, like well, and like yeah, deck building is kind of like different for each person. Like sometimes things might not work out, you know?
The ultimate rule of deck building is it's not really the deck building aspect, it's the playtesting. Every deck you start off with is most likely going to be garbage. And I'm also bad at deck building, and I think the misconception is that people think that they're bad at deck building, when the truth is that uh, the majority of deck building is a very long process of testing your deck also, and that's where the majority of deck building is. It's trial and error.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like science. Gotta try it out a lot.
Exactly.
Alright, on to our, I think, final question for today. What is the backstory on your username?
Oh, yeah. So, when I was in middle school, I that was when I started getting into writing. I wanted to write books, and I had this concept of a like a dimensional physicist, someone who was a scientist who was getting great progress with understanding different universes and how to transfer molecules in someone's being into different dimensions. And I had the story to where he one day was about to get ran over by a car when he was pulled into his own shadow and awoke inside the negative dimension where everything was black and white and reversed and nothing really made sense. And he he found out that the only reason he was pulled into the negative dimension was because of his progress with his technology and how he was slowly causing spikes and surges that made the inhabitants of the negative dimension see him, and they knew that the people of the negative dimension were being oppressed by a tyrant, and they needed a way to escape, and they wanted this scientist to open up a portal to our world and lead them to escape. But they didn't. They were having trouble finding rifts in space time, and they were hoping that with his understanding, he could act as like the legend of a map and guide them to where the best places to open these portals would be. And it was supposed to be a pun on the term legend. where it was not like legendary. It was supposed to be the legend of a map. Wow, guiding them to a better future. And I realized I didn't actually have an ending to that story, and I didn't have anywhere to write it. And I stopped and said, well, the title is cool as heck. I'm going to use it. And so I just kept using it for all my gamer tags, and I eventually just kept it for my YouTube channel. And long story short, it was a book I planned to write that never panned out.
Honestly, I would have read that book. Sounds really actually good. Sounds like a comic book that I would read, or like a cartoon that I'd probably watch.
I
Like,
like the concept, but there is no. I don't have a destination in mind, and that's the biggest flaw with writing stories. If you don't have a destination, then you're just going to waver, and it's going to go everywhere, and it's not going to be a good story if you don't know where you're going. Even if it's a bad destination, at least it's better than going everywhere and not knowing what's happening, even inside your own head. And that's like the concept is fine, but if you don't have a goal, then it's automatically bad.
yeah, there have been a lot of, things like that that have started good and then like really wavered.
Mm-hmm. It's a shame, and that's typically due to a conflict of interest when it comes to these, because typically writers have an idea of an ending in mind, even if it's a loose idea. Um, and it's difficult to tell if it's a bad writer or if it's too many people trying to put their hand into what the story should be. And you can never tell based on like the press or like the interviews they have with these people, because they always try to cover it up in order to make sure that they don't slander somebody else and open themselves up to possible litigation. You never know. It's difficult to interpret these things, but that's basically what I have to keep in mind whenever I'm listening to these kind of things.
Yeah. Anyway, do you have any words, okay, to conclude our, interview? Do you have any words to say to the audience who I hope is watching this video?
Subscribe to this guy. Hello. You should definitely share his social medias to everywhere you can. And if you want the Bakugan scene to grow, you need to go to your locals and talk to them about it, and actually inform people that it exists now, because for some reason because half the battle is on us.
You heard him. Subscribe to him as well. 100,000 subs and growing. Negative Legend, thank you for coming on the show. We are really thankful for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was fantastic having the chance to be interviewed by you.
All right.